Excellent. Thank you so much. And yeah, just even that first panel already, I have so many different ideas, and I was like, oh, I want to change my talk already. But really just appreciate being part of this conversation today. And as Lynn mentioned, really thinking about, oh, sorry. Yeah. You keep going then. I realized I didn't start my. Oh, it's not already. There you go. So as Lynn mentioned, kind of thinking about these other factors and how we think about prompting ideas, whether it's in your own work or the partnerships that you're connected to, or the other external folks that you're working with as well. Because really, as we're thinking about the human component of these systems, there are things that we could be thinking about in monitoring and thinking differently as well. So similar to some of the other folks, just kind of thinking about what's a big picture way to think about this and prompt some ideas and discussions for later in the day as well. Acknowledging that we're all are pretty familiar with the watershed here, but I wanted to use this slide for a minute to think about another way to frame where we live and work, and using a slightly different context as well. And so one of the ways that we can think about this place a little bit differently is as a social ecological system. And a lot of folks are already kind of thinking this way, but I wanted to take a minute to put this up. And so there's a whole set of literature around this framing, but I think some of the takeaways from this graphic, this is from McGinnis and Ostrom's work in thinking about these frameworks, where the issues or the situations that we're interested in, they're made up of resource systems and units. There's also governance systems and actors, the people and organizations that are interacting with each other. And those are leading to various different environmental and social outcomes that are connected to a whole range of different parts of our work as well. And so as we think about many of the topics that we're each interested in here, it becomes really important to also think about the other questions about the human components. And so thinking about what are the demographic trends and how that might be interacting with water quality, thinking about the sort of nitrogen topic that was coming up earlier. What are the trends in recreational uses of the watershed? So there's some interesting work in that space as well. But also, what are the views and values of residents in the watershed, and how might that connect to the work as well? And many, many more questions. I could spend the whole day brainstorming those questions. But along with those questions and potential interests and sort of thinking about the interactions there, we run into some risks here in thinking about, well, and maybe the equivalent is thinking about you can't sort of sample the same fish a million times and expect it to survive and be happy and thrive in the system. You can't do the same with people as well. And so there is this risk of survey fatigue, of overuse, and that can lead to declines in response rates and surveys or interviews or other efforts as well. So we really need to be cognizant about the systems and the people that we're studying as well as the potential for differences between, say, there's academic researchers looking at something, there's maybe regional planners looking at something, there's maybe municipal or state government. So when that's not coordinated, you just run into risks in the ability to integrate and draw interpretations from those data sets. So Ethan and Barbara, some really wheels turning on your conversations as well. So with that in mind, I think this really brings to some interesting opportunities. And so as we think about sort of how this all could come together, I'm not going to go in depth in this graphic. This is as we were prompted, sort of this little teaser. So hopefully folks can find me later and maybe we can talk about this graphic a little bit more as well. But the takeaway of this one is what I'm trying to convey in this is that whether we're thinking about community engagement or rights holder engagement, whether we're thinking about legally required public participation approaches that might be going on in our communities, or other fundamental social science research, these are three different but related efforts. And so sometimes we think about this all as one group together, but they're actually a little bit different. But these also present really interesting opportunities to think about how we might more effectively use existing data, including things that we might not think of as data. So folks have probably been to public meetings, hearing public comments. And so how do we think about taking advantage of those types of information as well? But then marrying that also with the larger interests of the social science community about values, perceptions, demographics, and how that all might be collected more systematically and made more available systematically as well to help inform your all's work, management decisions, a whole range of information as well. So I just want to leave us with a little bit of thinking about some really great examples that are already underway in this direction. You're going to hear one in just a minute, but also some other efforts related to some work that PrEP is doing and the Great Bay Reserve. and larger researchers in this region as well. We also have a project that's starting to dig into this, thinking about what existing work is available and how we might use that in different settings. So come see me if you're interested in talking more of that. That's supported by a transfer grant from the Neuroscience Collaborative. And really thinking broadly about the opportunities to think across organizations. So similar to the core grant example. So what are not just our individual questions and needs, whether it's management, informing education, thinking about research partnerships that you might have with communities, but how could we think about shared interview guides, shared protocols? What are those larger questions driving? And how can we both improve the understanding of what's going on in the system, but also better measure the impact of the actions that we're taking in these systems? So hopefully that prompts some questions and some thinking, and I would love to discuss that with folks as well.